So welcome everybody to Dhamma Loka for a very special memorial service. Really grateful for all the work that has gone into putting this memorial together. I think it's been the best part of a year. I wanted to acknowledge Ajahn Manisara for coming. It's quite auspicious to have monks and nuns running a service. All the people, the family and friends that have put the next hour together, and to acknowledge the admin support here who've done the best they can to bring all sorts of pieces of information together. I never met Richard. I wish I had, but when we were researching the 50th anniversary, I made heaps of efforts to try and find him, and I failed. So the last couple of weeks, it's been interesting piecing together. I knew from the interview with Maureen the important parts of the story, but to get a full sense of Richard and all the good things he's done, that's come together in the last few weeks. And we've tried to structure the service on the basis of some Buddhist teachings, to hear from family and friends of their reflections, to explain the range of Richard's life, and to celebrate, his contribution to establishing BSWA. None of the monastics here, none of the committee, most of us wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the fact that Richard, Maureen, and a few others like the Jayasiris, who I call the Magnificent Nine, hadn't got together and said, can we meet regularly? How can we learn some of the Buddhist teachings? So there are multiple people who will play a role, and it'll be nice to hear about Richard's journey through life and how he applied the Dhamma. Now, I've been to multiple sources to try and get a picture, but I'll give a short biography with Maureen's help, just to set the tone for everyone. And then I want to give two Buddhist reflections, and then we'll hear from family and friends who are welcome to come up to the microphone and give their reflections. Now, Richard was born in Berlin in 1949 to Helga, and he spent most of his early childhood in Germany. His father, Bill, was a member of the British occupation forces in Germany after the Second World War. When Richard was about 5 years of age, the small family moved to England. And yet, sadly, Richard didn't do too well at school. He had some learning difficulties, but he remembered going to a school in Greenwich Park in London. His mum, Helga, had secured a good position at Harrods and became the head of the Manchester department. Manchester's a name in the UK that tends to mean sort of linen, high-quality linen. And Maureen nicely commented that because of her accent and sophisticated bearing, she was often assisting overseas customers with very large orders of linen. Bill and Richard together moved to Western Australia with members of the Barton family, but Helga, having a secure role in life, did not want to join them, but she stayed in constant contact. For Western Australia, Richard still had some learning difficulties, but was helped out with his abilities in developing knowledge. And in those days, I hadn't heard of this before, but there was someone called a guidance officer, and helped Richard decide what did he want to do in terms of work and other things, and discussed several options. So, really good person in his life. And the guidance person was a friend of Maureen's. And lucky for us, because she knew some of the work that Richard wanted to do, the two were introduced, and the story started there. Two lives came together. What I wanted to understand from Richard's, supporters was what was the Dhamma that he was interested in, and some of the reflections from South Australia, from Ayasantachari and Padma, that some of you may know. I'll bring those in at the end of the ceremony. But one of Richard's favourite reflections was called the reflection on universal well-being. So I'll just chant it on all our behalf for Richard. May I abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may I maintain well-being in myself. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. May all beings be released from all suffering. May they not be parted from the good fortunes that they have attained. When they act upon intention, all beings are owners of their action and inherit its results. Their future is born from such action. Companion to such action, and its result will be their home. All actions with intention, being they skillful or harmful, of such acts, they will be the heirs. Monastics have wishes for everyone in the lay community. And if I had the opportunity to sit down with Richard, I would want to ask him what his favourite Dhamma is. And I know what his favourite Dhamma is, so we're incorporating that into the end of the ceremony when I'm going to ask that we all chant together to close the ceremony. But monastics would also have a wish for anyone who sincerely wanted to look at the Buddha's teachings, which is a journey that Richard started out long probably before the creation of BSWA, but an integral part of how he wanted to develop it with the Magnificent Nine, who went to the Australia-Asian House, I think it's 52 years ago now. So a monastic, if they had the opportunity, and we're doing this for you right now, Richard, is we would want to give a profound teaching that we hope that you caught at some stage in your life and therefore could see what the Buddha saw. And the sutta I've chosen is the Bahaya Sutta. I'll condense it a little bit, but for those that may not be Buddhist, this was a famous ascetic who was known as Bahaya of the bark cloth. Living in poverty, his dress was made of bark. He was compassionate. He was desiring of his own welfare. He thought he knew a lot about awareness and the line of thinking that needed to be followed to become an arahant. But when he was very revered in the community, he had a surprise one night when a devata came and said, "You, Bahaya, are neither an arahant, nor have you entered the path of arahantship. You don't even have the practice whereby you become an arahant or enter the path." Bahaya asks, "Then who in this world with its devas, with its arahants, have entered the path to arahantship?" Bahaya, there is a city in the northern country named Savatthi. There the Blessed One, an arahant, rightly self-awakened, is living now. He truly is an arahant and teaches the Dhamma leading to arahantship. So the Bahaya, chastened by the devata, left and makes his way quickly to where he believes that the Blessed One, the Buddha, is staying. It's called Jeta's Grove. On that occasion, there were a large number of monks who were doing walking meditation in the open air, and he went on arrival to them and said, "Venerable Sirs, is the Blessed One now staying here? I want to see the Blessed One, the Arahant, the rightly self-awakened one." "The Blessed One has gone into town for alms," he was told. So Baha'ya hurriedly leaves the Jeta Grove and goes forth, and in Savatthi he sees this supreme, inspiring confidence, calmness, a monk whose senses are at peace, his mind is at peace, and seems to attain the utmost tranquility and poised, tamed, guarding his senses, a great one. He walks up, bows to the Blessed One, and says, "Teach me the Dhamma, O Blessed One, teach me the Dhamma, O well gone, that it will be for my long-term welfare and bliss." When this was said, the Buddha said, "This is not the time, Baha'ya. We have entered the town for alms." A second time, Baha'ya tries, "But it's hard to know for sure what dangers there may be for the Blessed One's life right now, what dangers there may be for me. Teach me the Dhamma, O Blessed One, for my long-term welfare and bliss." A second time, the Buddha says, "This is not the time, Baha'ya. We have entered the town for alms." A third time, Baha'ya says to the Blessed One, "But it's hard to know for sure what dangers there may be for the Blessed One's life right now, or what dangers there may be for me. Teach me the Dhamma, that it will be for my long-term welfare and bliss." And this is the section that I hope Richard got to and appreciated in this life. The Buddha says famously, "Then, Baha'ya, you should train yourself thus. Within the seen, there'll only be the seen. Within the heard, only the heard. Within the sensed, only the sensed. Within the cognized, only the cognized. That is how you should train yourself. When for you there is only the seen within the seen, only the heard within the heard, only the sensed within the sensed, only the cognized within the cognized, then, Baha'ya, you will not be that by which the center, the master, when you are not that by which there is no you there." So I'll say that again. There is no you there. When there is no you there, you are neither here nor yonder, nor between the two. This itself is the end of suffering. Through hearing this brief explanation of the Dhamma from the Blessed One, the mind of Baha'ya, of the bark cloth, right there and then was released from the outflows through non-assumptions. Not long after the Blessed One had departed, Baha'ya was attacked and killed by a cow with a young calf. Then the Blessed One, having gone for alms in Savatthi after the meal, returning from the alms round with a large number of monks, saw that Baha'ya had died. On seeing him, he said to the monks, "Take Baha'ya's body, monks, and place it on a litter and carry it away, cremate it and build him a memorial. Your companion in the holy life has died." Responding, "As you say, Lord," to the Blessed One, the monks, placing Baha'ya's body on a litter, carried it away, cremated it, and built him a memorial. They went back to the Blessed One. On arrival, having bowed down to him, sat to one side. They said, "Lord, Baha'ya's body has been cremated, Lord, and his memorial has been built. What is his destination? What is his future state?" Monks, Baha'ya of the bark cloth was wise. He practiced the Dhamma in accordance with the Dhamma and did not pester me with issues related to the Dhamma. Baha'ya of the bark cloth, monks, is totally unbound. Then, on realizing the significance of the occasion, the Blessed One exclaimed, where water, earth, fire and wind have no footing. There the stars don't shine, the sun isn't visible, there the moon doesn't appear, there darkness is not found, and when a sage, a Brahman through sagacity, has realized for himself, then from form and formlessness, from bliss and pain, he is freed. So as monastics, our contribution today is to hope that Richard reached a stage of enlightenment, and from the way the monastics tried to help in the last few months in South Australia, we know that he was constantly listening to Dhamma and asking questions as much as he could. So we'd love to hear from Rena now, representing the Buddhist Society of Western Australia's committee, and John, whichever, sorry, I didn't get the right run sheet then. And then from the family of friends, if you'd all like to take turns at the microphone.
Yeah, well, I think the family were going to go first, and
I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
Okay. So please, I invite family and friends to come to the microphone and tell us your reflections of Richard. Are you okay there, Maureen?
Thank you. Richard and I met because of a mutual friend who introduced us. We looked at each other and there was an immediate connection. He was introduced as Richard Barton, and I called him Richard. And we chatted, and after a while I realised that I was calling him by another name, which he didn't correct. I thought he was being polite, but I was embarrassed and cast that name out of my mind. Richard told me he was a Buddhist. I knew very little about Buddhism then. And it was some time before I learned more and found that there was nothing to object to and much that was good. And I learned about rebirth. And I thought, we've known each other before. That's why we were so connected immediately, and why I called him by another name. The arrival of our little boy filled us with joy. Richard stayed with me all night and half the next day in the labour ward and the cubicle where he was delivered. Our little boy filled us with joy. He was a bright little fellow, and we thought that he would probably enter one of the professions and spend his life in the city. So we thought we should give him a country childhood. So we sought out a place for him, for us, which was southeast of Manjimup, in the bush, which he loved. This meant leaving our involvement with the Buddhist Society. We had been actively involved. Richard began the Buddhist Society, so we were actively involved. He started it, I wrote the letters, which is the fate of wives. We decided that we were never going to be rich, and the best thing we could do for him This was based on Buddhist principles of education and values to live by. Richard expanded my life beyond measure. My parents were tea drinkers, Bushells tea. Richard introduced me to the Twinings tea range. Gunpowder Green, Lapsang Souchong, and my favourite, Formosa Oolong. Once, when Richard left, I was on a supporting parents benefit, so fancy teas were not on my shopping list. So back to Bushells, or whatever was on special. At that time, instant coffee had arrived, and Richard drank cup after cup of it. He wanted me to keep pace with him, but I had to give up because I found the instant coffee hurt my throat. I still can't drink instant coffee, but he did introduce me to real coffee, made with coffee beans. And so when I enjoy my morning cup of coffee, I am reminded of him. The television arrived in the 1950s. Being from Boulder, which you know is near Kalgoorlie, and incidentally where all the gold mines are, not in Kalgoorlie, but in Boulder. Of course, in those days, there was no television. It wasn't until after I came to Perth that television arrived, but I never had the opportunity to watch television until I was married to a television set. He introduced me to Doctor Who, and I am still a Whovian. We also listened to the Goon Show on the radio, and I appreciated the British sense of humour, which I think is better than the American sort. I am wearing the maternity gown I made when this little fellow was coming.
Sorry.
Richard loved it. He thought it looked medieval, and he called me his mead maid. He said he was going to bury me in it, but alas, he has preempted that. Richard used to tell me that he would die when he was 30. He has more than twice exceeded that number. And I feel a great sense of loss when he left. I was devastated. I had lost part of myself. I telephoned Venerable Juggaro and we talked about it, and that helped me tremendously. I coped. I had to cope. I had a small son, a young son to look after, and I tried to help him with his inherited learning difficulties. But so there's always been a gap in my life. I last heard from Richard about 30 years ago, when Ananda rang me to say that his dad had died. I was, for a moment, set back. Then he read me the email that Fiona had sent. And I was so happy because he had good friends who cared about him, and happy that he was still a Buddhist. May he find happiness and peace. Thank you for listening to me.
going to work. I can talk loudly if not. Thank you. Hello. It looks like I've got a lot of pages here. I'll try and do it quickly. I'm Fiona. I was Jack's friend and carer. My husband Cliff and myself are from Aldinga Beach in South Australia. I first met Richard, or Jack, as I've known him, in 2010, when while travelling I ended up in Halls Creek in the East Kimberley and started work at Menkawam Nara, the Halls Creek People's Church for Our Aged. Menkawam Nara, very appropriately for Jack and myself, means a place to camp. Jack was the cleaner and also had the job of rationing the tobacco out to the old people. The first thing I noticed about Jack, I'll call him Jack because that's how I knew him, was his kindness to the old people, always treating them with respect and dignity. Jack was thought of highly by the people of the frail-aged, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. He was a very private, quiet man who genuinely cared for the old people. Jack and I became friends when he eventually told me that he had also been an EN when he was in the forces. I think my words were, well, that makes you make sense now. I always knew you were more than a cleaner. No insult to cleaners there. Jack always thought my best skill was being able to roll a cigarette, even though I didn't smoke. I could go round with him to the old people and help him roll the cigarettes because that was part of his role. I have to thank my grandpa for that. Jack and I would have wonderful conversations on history, politics, religion, travel and life's journey. He loved listening to my stories of my adult children's lives, my parents ageing, and especially loved stories of my little granddaughters. He insisted they have a good education while exploring and using their imagination. We were of like minds. We connected because our mutual restlessness and our mutual learning difficulties. We both understood children that were active and busy, which was all my children, and it looks like all my grandchildren. Jack is the reason The Panda and the Little Green Dragon is a book in our library, along with all Pooh Bears. Jack has proudly hung my little girl's paintings that they gave to him in his room. He also asked that they be put in his coffin when he passed. Jack and my relationship was one of mutual respect and recognition and acceptance of where restlessness had led us to in life. For me, I always admired his intelligent mind and thirst for knowledge, even when he became unwell. His memory was phenomenal, and he is still the only person I know who considered encyclopedias light reading. Pretty incredible for someone with learning issues and all the frustrations that go with that as a child. In 2012, Jack decided it was time to retire from Halls Creek. I was still up there and asked me if I thought Orroroo was a good place. I thought this was pretty good because my grandparents were in Wilmington, had been in Wilmington, so as a child I knew all about Orroroo, which is in the mid-north near the Flinders Ranges in South Australia. I was happy as it was a place I knew from my childhood. My son Tom and I went for a drive to have a look at this little house that he'd found on the internet. Jack loved the internet because it opened a whole new world for him. Jack, Bandit and his little dog and I had wonderful times exploring the area, going to all the old cemeteries in the Flinders Ranges, looking for the right place for him to be when he passed. Jack would lie down the direction he wanted to face on certain cemeteries, making sure that the view he had was going to be wonderful. we would laugh about it. He said, "You can sit there and have your coffee and take Bandit." Jack at the time could not have seen how getting in touch with Maureen and Amanda once he had passed would lead to him resting here at the monastery, a place that meant a lot to him. He used to say, "Fiona, how out of little seeds big things grow." It was Jack that sent me the YouTube of Maureen's interview. And also, I think Jack's illness came on fairly quickly, and I always said he needed to write a book to fill in the missing years. We didn't quite get around to it. Jack and Bandit loved living in Orroroo, making acquaintances and friends on their regular walks around the town. Bandit leading the way, and Jack more than happy to let him and follow. Bandit definitely ruled the roost. As Jack became obviously unwell in 2022 and our discussions deepened, he started to talk more about his Buddhist beliefs and his reconnection and the process he wanted or needed to follow. It was then Jack, after a conversation about closure and more personal about Ananda and Maureen, that he gave me permission once he had passed, to get in touch with Maureen and Ananda through the WA Buddhist Society. He had followed both their lives. Once again, the internet's a wonderful thing, Fiona, and was very proud sending me the YouTube of Maureen's interview for the 50th anniversary. Jack always knew I would advocate for him, so there was no intervention from medical staff other than to keep him comfortable. A lot of our laughs were about me saying, "I'll turn the machines off, Jack," when Jack was worried about who would advocate for him. If only he'd known how welcome he would have been if he'd gone back to Manjimup, even just to say hello. Due to Orroroo being rural and remote, and 24-hour care for Jack wasn't available, we decided to move Jack closer to myself and family. With the support of Cliff and my kids, I would be then able to support him more regularly. I found a lovely room in Yankalilla, ACH. Had to have 2 doors, he was very specific, had to have an outside door and an inside door. So we found a room with an outside door and a view of the hills and its nightly kangaroos. There was also room for Jack's shrine, which we pedantically set up for him with candles on a timer and the nightlight strategically placed. The staff were fabulous there. A couple of Buddhists on staff because at Selleck's Beach there is a big Buddhist temple. And I was able to stay with Jack and assist with Jack's end-of-life care when it came to the end. The move also made it possible for Aya Santachari, the Pakuni from the SA Buddhist Society, to provide Jack with pastoral care. Aya and I had some wonderful trips because she didn't want to drive the windy road into Yankalilla, talking about Jack and his feelings of guilt and not feeling he had enough merit, and that he needed. I have provided the pastoral care he needed while he was waiting impatiently for his guides to come for him. I wish to thank Aya and other members of the Buddhist Society of South Australia for taking the time to visit Jack and accept his gifts and give him the solace he needed to believe he deserved a meritorious rebirth. I also want to, sorry, this is all a bit my brain going here, thank Cliff, my husband, for accepting Jack as a friend, and my kids who just loved him, and I'm sure my son and Jack would be twins in some life because the conversations they would have on things that I had no idea about were incredible to be a spectator of. Thank you, Maureen, Ananda and Helga, Jack's mum, for being gracious and welcoming to Cliff and myself. I wish Jack could have been with us the last few days as I'm sure he would have found love, peace and closure as well. Thank you to Aurora and Elle for all the go-between correspondence, and thank you, Venerable Matachi, I'm not sure how I can say that right, for overseeing the memorial today. I'm very proud of my friend and forever changed for having known him.
Richard was a significant adult during the formative years of my childhood. Richard, Maureen and their son Ananda were our neighbours and friends, and that friendship has had a lasting impact on my childhood and my life to this day. My first impressions of Richard were many, including his height. He may have been the tallest person I'd ever seen. His patience and kindness, his acceptance of others as they were, and his ability to provide an interesting counterpoint to any popular culture view. But the one factor that fascinated me the most was that he was the primary caregiver for Ananda, while Maureen worked outside the home as a teacher. I'd never seen a family arrangement like this before, and it allowed me to get to know Richard quite well when Ananda came to visit our farm. When Ananda came to play, we sewed flags and constructed swords, did numerous drawings and paintings, went on picnics, made cubby houses, and conjured up stories about alternative worlds. And when collecting Ananda, Richard would always sit with him and ask him questions about what he'd been doing, showing great interest and care. Richard was a devoted father to Ananda. Fatherhood seemed to come naturally to him, and he dedicated himself to caring for Ananda in every way. Again, I'd not seen such displays of affection and demonstrations of attentiveness between a father and a child before, as my own father was more traditionally busy working long hours. This type of social progressiveness was evident in so many ways in the family, as Richard was also a wonderful cook. This was another skill I didn't see many other men perform. He made beautiful meals, baked biscuits, cakes and bread, which he often delivered to neighbours as gifts. Personally, I always appreciated Richard's comments about my custard making skills, as my own father used to complain that he could throw my custard against the wall and it would stay there. One night when Richard, Maureen and Ananda were eating dessert with us, Richard asked who'd made the custard, as it was delicious. So of course I was very gratified. Richard always took an interest in what I was doing too. He asked about my hobbies. He encouraged me to learn French with Ananda. He let me look through his vast collection of books in their library when I visited, and even lent me some of his reference books when I was doing my exams in high school. I always knew Richard as a devoted husband and father who was a homemaker, a cook and a gardener. As Ananda got older, Richard took on work as an orderly at the local hospital and was also studying sociology. His commitment to Buddhism was something he was always willing to share with those who asked, and he lived the part of his life that I observed in a consistently kind and compassionate manner. We were all deeply saddened when Richard eventually left our local community. But I was very pleased to hear in latter years that he'd settled in South Australia, was working, had a comfortable home and a beautiful dog and loving friends to share his life. It was an honour to know Richard, and I thank him for his positive influence in my life.
Hello, I'm Di. I was at Halls Creek with Jack. Richard, it's getting confusing. Jack was obviously a man of many parts, and I thought I'd give you a glimpse of the man I knew between 2009 and 2010. Do you want me over there? While he was living and working in Halls Creek. I was there between 2008 and 2011, and I spent 3 weeks at a time living on site and delivering training to the staff. I'm very pleased to be able to be here today to pay my respects to Jack. Although I wouldn't say that I knew him well, Jack was a real individual. He was interesting and kind, and I developed a great respect for him and thoroughly enjoyed his company. A bit of background on Halls Creek itself, which is interesting place. It's remote, a small town in the East Kimberley, between Fitzroy Crossing and Turkey Creek. The surrounding country is absolutely beautiful. Beautiful red earth, the country, the rocks and the hills, amazing bush and scenery. It was originally established as a gold mining during the gold rush days, and the gold didn't last long, so the town became a centre for trade and transport, serving Aboriginal communities and cattle stations. Halls Creek is at the start of the Canning stock route. It's not always easy to live there due to the isolation. It's difficult to access services and there are extremes of weather. In the wet season there's thunder, lightning, lots of rain and flooding, and the dry season there's temperatures in the high 40s throughout the summer. The population of the town is about 1,500 people and it's largely Indigenous. People come and go, some drifting through and others living and working there. And they come from all walks of life. And now an insight into the aged care facility. There were about 25 elderly Aboriginal residents living there, most of whom had lived a fairly traditional life out in the bush, but they'd come into the town due to ageing and poor health and the need for higher levels of care. The facility tried to maintain traditional values and cultures as much as possible. While I was there, 2 residents received letters from the Queen as they turned 100. To look after the old folk, there are a number of staff, most of whom lived on site. Carers, nurses, kitchen staff, cleaners, handyman and the admin staff, all living and working closely together. Very often there weren't enough staff on shift and people mucked in to help each other, and Jack was part of that community. Jack was what I always thought of as being the typical Australian bushie. He generally got about in his singlet and shorts, he was bearded and he drove a ute. He had a huge general knowledge and was usually a man of very few words and mostly kept to himself. But given the right time and mood, he was a good listener and great for an in-depth discussion and conversation on a wide variety of subjects. He had a store of stories and could often be found under the mango tree having a smoke, and that was usually a good time to catch him for a chat. He was definitely his own person. He spent time with the residents and was kind. In winter, he lit the outdoor fire early in the mornings and kept it going throughout the day. The oldies loved to sit around and would have breakfast and drink tea, and Jack, like the rest of the staff, would have a chat with them as they passed through. As Fiona said, he was in charge of the tobacco and giving it out to the old folk. Most of the old Aboriginal people chewed tobacco, some like rollies, and a few had tailor-mades. Jack would keep their tobacco stocks up and make sure they didn't run out. Each day he'd go around and give each person their personal quota and have a chat. I'm sure he did a bit of a juggling act too to make sure no one missed out. Jack had a positive impact on many lives there. Staff and residents were enriched by his presence, and he's fondly remembered by many of us who worked there with him. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone. That has been profoundly moving to hear so many people speaking highly of my father. It's sad that we often don't know how much we appreciate someone until we lose them. So thank you for everyone who's spoken. One of my earliest memories is of listening to a talking book of Winnie the Pooh with my father, in which Piglet, Pooh's friend, is planting an acorn to grow an oak tree, and Piglet digs a hole with a tiny shovel, drops the acorn in, and then jumps on it to press the earth down. On Sunday, Fiona and Cliff and myself were planting a tree in honour of my father on our property in the southwest, and I remembered that story, although I must add that instead of jumping on the tree, I used my boot to firm the soil up. I'm not Piglet. For the last few days, I've been taking Cliff and Fiona around to show them some of the spots in the southwest that my father knew and loved. On Sunday morning, before we planted the tree, we visited our old house, which was a cottage built in the Victorian era by one of the first white settlers in the area. And certainly seeing it again as an adult, my first thought was that it was much smaller than I remembered it. But the current owners have made some changes, but they've been very careful to preserve the atmosphere and heritage of the place, so it's still recognisably, if Dad visited it, he would recognise it, particularly since the garden is still the garden that he laid out. The roses that he planted are still there, the garden he would still recognise, the flowers that we see at the base of his photo there came from that garden, and he would have known them and probably planted them. Before we left, the current custodian of the property, because I don't think you can really own an old place like that, you're the custodian, offered to let us, that we could scatter Dad's ashes in the garden. And, I declined, but it was an incredibly generous offer, and I think shows the impact that Dad had on that property. The previous day we'd visited Mount Tudalup, a granite monolith overlooking the Southern Ocean. I remember climbing Mount Tudalup with my father as a child. The mountain, as mountains go, is not very big, but when you're around 5 or 6 years old, it looked enormous. And I remember climbing up with my father helping me over some of the rough patches, because now they've put in boardwalks. At the time, you were just climbing over bare rocks. So that was a tremendous adventure for me, and one that I'll always remember my father making possible. When Fiona and I reached the top, Cliff had sensibly stayed on terra firma. I looked out over the ocean and remembered seeing that same view with my father when I would have been quite young, and I can understand how my father, with his artistic soul, would have loved that panorama. I also took Fiona to a ruined bridge over the Warren River, where I played Pooh Sticks with my father, which is another Winnie the Pooh reference, I think the third today. Pooh Sticks is a game where you drop a stick over a bridge and then you run to the other side and wait to see how long it takes for the stick to come out. The bridge now, unfortunately, is in ruins. You can no longer cross it, but when I was a child, we still could, and yes, I played Pooh Sticks there with my father. We also visited St Mark's Church, which is a former one-room schoolhouse lost in the hollow of the hills. And again, I have memories of visiting there with my father and mother. We walked along the old road from our property, and I'd been reading a book on Roman Britain and knew that the Romans were great road builders, so I asked my father, did the Romans visit Western Australia, because maybe they'd built the road. I can't remember my father's answer, but I'm sure he explained, no, the Romans were not in Western Australia. I also took the Biltons along the Warren River, and one thought that occurred to me was that there were many places that my father would recognise: the rapids, rocks covered in moss, deep still pools at the bends of the river. And one memory I'd like to share with you, we had a little dog, Inu, and I remember one summer my father going swimming in the river and carrying Inu in under his arm. And Inu was not a dog who liked water, and so even before my father had entered the water, her little paws were paddling frantically, and as soon as Dad got in the water and let go of her, she immediately turned and swam to the bank and climbed up and shook herself, no doubt very relieved to be back on terra firma. So, while my father left while I was still a child, but he's left me with these unforgettable memories, and we can see from other people, the Biltons, and their other, Eileen, yourself, my mother, he's left many other people equally wonderful memories. And so while he's gone, he's certainly living on in our memories, in the people whose lives he touched, and in the places he loved. I'd like to close with some lines from the Australian poet Victor Kennedy. But death, can death claim anything that love has given life to? Thank you.
My name is John Cook. I'm the secretary of the Buddhist Society of Western Australia, and this eulogy to Richard Barton is on behalf of the BSWA committee. Obviously, I did not know Richard, but I'm a beneficiary of his wonderful work as in the inaugural committee of BSWA. We gather with deep gratitude to honor the memory of Richard Barton, a founding member of the Buddhist Society of Western Australia, and a man whose dedication helped lay the foundation for what is now a thriving spiritual community. Richard encountered Buddhism through books. While we may not know all the details of his early practice, it's clear that those readings sparked an interest that led him to explore the Dhamma further. That interest would eventually play a role in helping to establish a Buddhist community here in Perth. When he met his wife Maureen, Richard was already a Buddhist, believing there must be other Buddhists in Perth. He suggested she write to the Buddhist Society of New South Wales to make contact. That small but significant act of reaching out became the catalyst for something much greater. In 1973, with a vision and a few like-minded individuals, Richard helped to establish the Buddhist Society of Western Australia. The first meeting was held in a humble home, his home, 30 Tate Street, West Leederville. It was there, in that small house, with big aspirations, that the seeds of the society were sown. Richard was instrumental in setting it all in motion. He became the first librarian on the original committee, of which Maureen was the secretary, a group of just 9 people, as Venerable Mataji has said, the Magnificent Nine. From those modest beginnings, the society has grown to become one of the most respected Buddhist organizations in the world, with around 4,000 members today, half of whom are still actively engaged. Richard's early contributions were vital in shaping the Buddhist Society of Western Australia. The legacy of those efforts lives on in every Dhamma talk, every moment of meditation, and every step taken by those who have followed the path he helped to open. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things are impermanent, but also that wholesome actions create ripples that continue long after we've gone. Richard's contribution to spreading the Dhamma exemplified this truth. His work has helped countless beings find their way to the Triple Gem. We remember Richard not only as a founding member, but as a man of determination and vision, and from the many who've come forward, as a kind and compassionate man. His legacy continues in the flourishing of the Dhamma, not only in Western Australia, but around the world, in the hearts of all who benefit from the community he helped build. As we reflect on his life, may the merit of his good deeds support him in his journey. May he find on his onward journey, may Richard attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. May all beings benefit from the wholesome karma he generated in this life. May his legacy continue to inspire generations to come.
Thanks very much. It was lovely to hear all of the reflections. Such a beautiful picture described for all of us, and a depth and understanding of this wonderful man. One of the things that sort of touched me when we learned about the request for the memorial was the involvement of the Buddhist Society of South Australia, Padma, the president, and Ayya Santachari. And Richard may not well have been aware, as with the other good people, when the society started, that one glorious day we would be able to have bhikkhunis, not only in Western Australia, but the whole of Australia, start a renewal and a revival that was really, really important. Before asking Ayya Manisra just to mention some reflections on behalf of the nuns, I just wanted to read you a couple of things that I was sent because I promised the Buddhist Society of South Australia that I would mention this. So Padma wanted to say that she'd had the privilege of knowing Jack in his final moments of his life. As has been mentioned, he'd moved to a nursing home south of Adelaide and asked his wonderful friend Fiona to reach out to a Buddhist organisation for him. Fiona then contacted the Buddhist Society of South Australia. Sadhu, sadhu, says Padma. I was very humbled to find myself in Dhamma conversations with a beautiful man who'd played a part in the foundation of the magnificent blossoming of the Dhamma in Western Australia. While celebrations of 50 years were being held in Perth, I found myself with a gentle, self-effacing man who, whilst deeply held in the faith of the Buddha's teachings, felt he'd done nothing to bring about such joy. The joy that we all feel to see monastics progressing along the path that Bodhinyana for the male monastics and Dhammasara for the nuns, and the great happiness and wisdoms that their teachings had brought us. He wanted to remain unknown, and when I asked him to allow me to contact BSWA and inform him of his health, he would not let me. Something in him felt undeserving, and it pained me because I knew there would be a strong wave of loving kindness directed towards him that would surround him and walk with him to the edge of his life. Ajahn Brahm asks, how many times can we forgive someone? Always one more time. Why is it we find this teaching so difficult to apply to forgiving ourselves? I set Jack up with links to mountains of wonderful teachings online, and he spent his months of his life dedicated to listening to the Dhamma and chanting whenever he could. He was a very precious being who left this life with serene dignity and the peacefulness of the Buddha Dhamma. Thank you, Jack, for allowing us to be with you during this time. May you continue upon the path to Nibbana. Sadhu, 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 from Padma. We received a lovely message from Rohini Jayasuriya that I'd like to read out. Rohini and Professor Jayasuriya were two of the Magnificent Nine. Richard Barton, along with Maureen, are central to the development of Buddhism in Western Australia. I remember their tireless attempts as founding committee members to nurture and feed a very small seedling that was the Buddhist Society of Western Australia. It's a testimony to their hard work and commitment that this plant has now grown into the towering tree that it is today. I remember the hard work, but also the fun we all shared in nurturing the growth of this Dharma community. And from Rohini's son, my mother, as do I, remember the early years with great affection. She particularly remembers you, Ananda, as a young boy attending the various gatherings of the BSWA. She sends her best wishes to you and Maureen, as done Ajahn Brahm, who unfortunately was teaching a retreat today, but he sends you his blessings and apologies. And lastly, Minister will give some reflections and then lead us in a chant. I just want to let you know from Ayya Santachari that she saw it as an honor to visit him in the nursing home, and he loved to hear the Dhamma that she would chant. And one chant in particular that we would like to close the ceremony with in a few minutes' time is the Metta Sutta. It was the one thing that she thought on his last day, when he was mostly unresponsive, that was important to chant. And when she chanted the Metta Sutta, which I'm going to ask us all to do in a few minutes, together around the urn, when she chanted, he smiled deeply.
Thank you, Venerable Mataji, and thank you for everyone who's spoken today. It's been lovely to hear everyone's reflections. So now I'll give a few of my own. As Venerable Mataji mentioned briefly, one of the things, obviously, that came to mind for me as a bhikkhuni was exactly what he said, that I felt so much gratitude to learn that Richard, I watched the video on the 50th anniversary, and I really appreciated that Venerable Mataji had put that together, because I really value knowing the history of how the BSWA came to be, because I've benefited so much from it. And I remembered Maureen, because you gave the interview, but like the name Richard just kind of maybe sort of didn't stay, because there was no picture of a face to go along with it. So I watched it again last night, and I reflected on how, for me, the BSWA has been so important, because it's really the only organization in the lineage of Ajahn Chah's disciples, which I had started to follow in Thailand when I was starting to get more serious about practicing the Dhamma, and I have found that felt the most resonant with me, and I felt I had found my Dhamma home. But then when I wanted to ordain, I realized, there's no place in this Dhamma home for me to ordain. And so it was really, for me, so special to have the chance to ordain here with Ajahn Brahm as presiding over the bhikkhu side of it, and having Ajahn Chah's picture here always in Dhammaloka, because I still feel part of it then. But not even that, not even just feeling part of being in the lineage of what I consider would be my main teacher, even though I have never met Ajahn Chah, but being in an organization that always had wanted nuns from the beginning, which is a very unusual thing if you come from Thailand, and a very special feeling as a woman, to feel that you had always been part of the plan, and you had always been valued, and you're always an equal part of the monastic part of the community. And that's only possible because Richard and Maureen started the BSWA. And to be able to reap that benefit is not something I could do anywhere, honestly. It's not, in Thailand there are other places, but certainly in the West, this is the largest, and I don't know if I can say this maybe, but I think it's one of probably the most thriving kind of places for bhikkhunis, fully ordained nuns. So I thought it was really maybe no coincidence that actually the person who went to offer him support in his final days was a bhikkhuni. Aya Santacharya and I spent some time together when we were both junior nuns, so I've known her from a long way back. And her bhikkhuni ordination happened at Santi, which you may or may not know, had been offered by someone who later became Aya Nirodha, one of the first of the 4 bhikkhunis to take bhikkhuni ordination, that historic ordination in 2009 in Perth. And she had been one of the early, not the earliest, but on the scene quite early about Buddha Dhamma, where Prat Kantipalo had been teaching. And I found from that video that Prat Kantipalo was the first one you had invited to do the very first weekend retreat here. So you see, all these karmic connections are there. And so it is sad to hear from those last reflections that he might have felt that he didn't deserve the merit, but of course we always deserve the merit. There's no one who can take it away from us. Any good deeds we have done, we will bear the fruit, of course. But the thing is, the beautiful thing is, we don't know how big that fruit's going to be. So what I really admire in the story of Richard was how he just did something, you know, rather than just to bemoan the fact that, oh, there's nobody in Perth, other Buddhists, it's such a small community, we have nobody else to share our practice with, and oh, poor me, poor me. He reached out, he did something about it. And then he did the work with Maureen. They did the work, the first Magnificent Nine. They did the work to start something. And without knowing what it would become, it made it possible for it to become what it has become. And it's made it possible for all of us to benefit. Certainly I feel the benefit, but untold people who have benefited, we don't even know. I mean, I don't know who has listened to any of the teachings that are now available online. Countless. And so that all comes from one person who decided to do something about it. Two people. It's never just one. Because you wrote the letter, right? And that's probably quite a bit of work to write a nice letter. And so that's something which we can all reflect on with gratitude, but also to take inspiration from that. To take inspiration for starting something when we see a need. For supporting others to do what it is they also aspire to do, in that story of how you had opened your home to host pujas for the small group of Buddhists that were in the initial group. And so that's become something like Dhammaloka is a big place for people to do puja together. You know, it's kind of a bigger version of what it began with. But the thing is, that's something we can take into our own life to see how we can help support anything that is new, or support other people who want to further explore the Dhamma, to deepen their practice. All of this is what we can take away as inspiration. And also, what can I say? He's a librarian, the first librarian. As a librarian of Dhammasara, I have a great respect and fondness for books and for people who love them. Although I myself do not consider encyclopedias light reading. For me, Calvin and Hobbes is heavy reading. And so obviously there are different degrees of bookworms and their accomplishments in book reading. But the idea of being a lover of knowledge, a lover of truth is basically what it is, a lover of learning, and one who can support others to do that, I think is also a great contribution. So finally, I just wanted to, also just notice how in everyone's reflections, as someone mentioned, a person has so many different dimensions to them, phases of life to them, ways we've known them. And it's wonderful that at the end of the day, when they have passed, what we write our speeches about is all the good they have left us with. And even though in most Buddhist funerals, they usually cremate the body, so we don't have like tombstones or gravestones, but we do have at Dhammasara, I believe the same at Bodhinyana, people can put the ashes in our ash wall and have a bit of something, a plaque or something. And so that idea of carving in stone words of appreciation, people might say, oh, beloved, so-and-so, or something, just a sense of appreciation. It reminded me of a story one of my teachers had told me. It was like sort of a parable that tells a story of, this man or, I forget exactly what the details, but basically this man and his friend were walking somewhere and they had spent the whole day together. And then the friend had done something very nice for him in the early part of the day. But then later on in the day, he did something not very nice to him. And the sort of moral of the story was that you should carve in stone the good thing that he did for you, and carve in sand the thing that was not so good that he did to you, and let the waters of the ocean wash the sand away, but let what remains be what's carved in stone. So I hope today we've done a lot of engraving in stone in our, not only what we've heard, but what we retain in our hearts and our minds. I was not lucky enough to have personally met or known Richard, but even through what has come through in all the stories today, I feel there's plenty to be carved in stone. And for me, I feel personally very grateful, because I've gained so much from the BSWA, even since the time I was a layperson, studying the Dhamma, trying to find a teacher who actually spoke to my heart, and being able to not only listen and read the teachings, but actually to come and ordain and train under this teacher. I mean, what a blessing. So Richard may not know this ever happened, but I will know, and I will remember, and I will count my blessings, and hope today is not the only day I will honor him in my heart. So I hope everyone here has something similar to take home with them. So may we just take a moment to just dedicate the merits of all our wholesome mind states and wholesome intentions in coming here today, and remembering the good qualities of a person committed to the Dhamma to the very last day of his life, committed to learning about it, growing in it, and helping others do the same. So may whatever peace and happiness that arises in our hearts from our own good deeds, but also his, may this be shared with Richard wherever he may be. May this be a cause for his happiness, his peace, his further growth in the Dhamma, and for his complete freedom from all suffering. Sadhu.
Put this back on. Sorry. So now is the point in the ceremony where we ask family and friends to offer the robes to the monastics. Ajahn Brahm has an expression in passing the robes to the coffin or the urn, you're wishing the person is going business class to the next life. But I don't accept that. I think Richard should go first class, given the amount of goodness that he's brought to not only Western Australia and then Australia. While I was talking, I think a year ago I went and checked, and I think there's been 18 million downloads on YouTube since BSWA took it up. So from that little seed that was referred to, it is a towering tree that we have to nurture with care and look after, and it's wonderful that nuns and monks have benefited from his efforts. So we'll present the robes. I will then lead the first chant, and we'll close the ceremony by asking you all to bring up the piece of paper, and perhaps we can just be in an arc around Richard and chant the Metta Sutta to finish the ceremony. So we'll just do the robes first, please. Yeah.
So in traditional Buddhist funeral ceremonies, they'll often chant a short verse in Pali that reminds us of impermanence. But today, being as there's probably quite a number of non-Buddhists here, we'll just do it in English so that perhaps you might be able to follow along with the meaning. So, being as we're not a band that has practiced with each other often this tune, so we're just going to go tuneless today and we're just going to read it, straight, okay? All right. Impermanent are all things. Their nature is to arise and pass away. Having arisen, they will cease. Their stilling is bliss. Impermanent are all things. Their nature is to arise and pass away. Having arisen, they will cease. Their stilling is bliss. Impermanent are all things. Their nature is to arise and pass away. Having arisen, they will cease. Their stilling is bliss. And just a verse just reminding us about what this truth is of living and dying. All living beings are dying, have died, and will die. In the same way, I will die. I have no doubt about this. And now we can perhaps gather into a circle and do the Metta Sutta, the words on loving kindness, together. Or do you want just to sit?
No, please
Gather.
come round, and this will conclude this ceremony. So give it full voice as we do the Metta Sutta together. If you haven't got a copy, please ask us to get you one.
Okay. This is the corner. Okay. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be happy. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, not holding to false views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I missed the path. I was keeping you on your toes.